You wouldn't normally start a car review sitting down. You'd normally be in a car driving it. But with this, the new 911 Turbo S, you need a minute. I need a minute to get my head around a few things. Sounds weird, doesn't it? But let me explain. The Porsche 959, that 80s halo car, would do 0 to 62 miles an hour in around 3.7 seconds. It would do 0 to 124 miles an hour in around 13 seconds. This, the 992 Turbo S, will do 0 to 62 miles an hour in 2.7 seconds and 0 to 124 miles an hour in 8.9 seconds. Now I know there's such a thing as progress, but still. I felt like I was actually going to the moon then. The Porsche 911 story began back in 1975 with the 930 Turbo, the ultimate Autobahn Express. Its 3-litre engine produced 260 PS and it would crack 155 miles an hour. People loved it so much that after the 930 Turbo, Porsche built the 964 Turbo, then the 996, the 997 and the 991. Now with every one of those generations, the Turbo became a little bit heavier, but it was also faster and more powerful. And guess what? It's exactly the same with the 990. Power comes from a 3.7 litre twin-turbo flat-six, specifically 650 PS at 6,750 RPM and 800 Newton meters of torque from 2,500 RPM to 4,000 RPM. That's a full 70 PS and 50 Newton meters more than the 991 Turbo S, thanks in part to 2 larger turbochargers that have moved to a new location, new injectors, a new intake and a new charge air cooling system. Impressive, especially as no one ever complained about the 991 being slow. But of course there's more to the Turbo S than just some extra power and torque. Even with a chassis that uses considerably more aluminium, there's around 40 kilograms of extra weight, but there have been some significant changes to make the 992 the most capable and most engaging 911 Turbo ever. The front axle is 42mm wider, the rear 10mm wider. The front and rear wheels are different sizes, 20 inches up front and 21 inches at the rear, with wider tyres to match. There's also rear wheel steering, and the carbon ceramic brakes, standard on the Turbo S, are larger too, measuring 420mm at the front and 390mm at the rear. There's an 8-speed PDK gearbox as well that can deliver even more torque to the wheels, and there are active aerodynamics that have increased the level of downforce by up to 15% over the previous Turbo S to 170 kilos. Essentially, the 992 Turbo S is more of a big, scary, monstrous hooligan than ever before, and it's more capable, and it's better to drive. Aside from the monumental grip generated by those Pirellis and the fact that this does ride firmer than something like a 992 Carrera, but actually it's still very comfortable. You've got adaptive dampers, you've got dynamic engine mounts. One of the first things that I noticed when I started to drive this was the four-wheel steering. Once you've got a bit of speed as well, when you turn in, you can just feel the nose just tuck in. The whole car rotates, but it's just so stable. What your brain thinks is possible doesn't really match up with what the car is capable of achieving. steering itself is nicely weighted too. The brakes are ferocious, and the acceleration, it's addictive. That whoa surprise feeling is helped along by the fact that down here on the steering wheel you've got a little rotating switch that does the drive modes. So you've got normal, sport, sport plus, you've also got a wet mode, and it changes things like the throttle response, the sound of the exhaust. But in the middle of that rotating switch there's a button, and if you press it you get something called sport response, and for 20 seconds you get the whole car just in maximum attack mode. So you can be in comfort, cruising, chilling, need to overtake something where you just want a bit more acceleration. Press it and have a listen. The car's awake. Very awake. Oh goodness, yeah, it's very, very awake. And there's some proper noise to this as well. Turbos kind of have this reputation of being a bit quiet, perhaps sounding a bit like a vacuum cleaner, but actually, I'll put it in Sport Plus, drop it down. At the top of the rev range, you've actually got some proper Porsche flat 6 noise up there, beyond 6,000 RPM. The engine just wakes up again. And as nice as it is to go up and down through the gears yourself with the pedals, actually, when you do a launch, leave it in D, left foot on the brake, right foot on the accelerator, let the car do the work. That is ferocious, ferocious. You're up through the gears so fast, it's more impressive and actually more fun just to leave it in D, just to let it do the work. It knows when to change gear to get the most acceleration, and honestly, it's like being on a roller coaster. Is it scary having all that performance? Well, a car like this, something that quite frankly would blow away a 959, it would blow away every other generation of 911 turbo that's come before it. You'd think it would feel intimidating, but honestly, you unlock it, you open it, you get in, start it, it's automatic, you just set off, and you're like, oh, this is very nice. It's actually quite relaxing. I think that's the magic of the 911 Turbo. On the one hand, you've got a car that's very approachable, very easy to drive. Anyone could jump in it and potter about in it every single day. But then, at the touch of a button, at the flex of your right foot, you are going into orbit. It has the most fabulous split personality. There are very few cars that could keep up with this.